Right, so it's fallen to me to give you the kind of, I suppose, a little bit more of the structure for the programme and a sense of the kind of the reach that we undertook with the project. So it was funded by the Arts Council Strategic Touring Programme, and with all of the kind of intentions that Jonathan and Ian have so eloquently kind of explained. I'm just going to kind of take us through the kind of the reach and the approach very briefly. So as Jonathan said, the real kind of driving principle behind it was a fundamental conviction and belief that poetry had the ability to really, I suppose, change lives. And we put it down in our application that the kind of priority audiences, schools, teachers, young people, with a kind of public participation programme that I'll come on to, which was absolutely central as well, were all going to be reached through the kind of central project aims. So the aims of the overall project as part of kind of having such huge fun within museum and gallery spaces was to really kind of fuse that line between visual literacy and literacy. It was a really kind of confident space that we felt that the material was really strong in. So we debated the connections between the programme and the media, and we were particularly interested in trying to find a really kind of strong visual image, which now you know some of the stories behind the portraits. I'm not sure those images are quite as strong. They're quite kind of accidental and kind of creative. But the kind of sense of personifying the people and their work, just making that link between living poets and a sense of this is what a poet can really look like, we felt was a very kind of tangible and inspirational part of the project. So portraiture, as you'll hear us kind of talk a lot about here, is the kind of the immediacy of the face and that sense of connection that young people feel very kind of is very accessible. They feel very immediate. It can stimulate words and ideas very quickly. But also that important point of connecting to the poet as a person. I think in discussion with Jonathan in very early stages, we talked about that making the inner world of the poet more accessible. So the construction of the visual image as being a way into the personality, the work, the ideas of the poet. So that was kind of very kind of central to making the intention of the programme. But we're also aware that our partners needed to have a compelling exhibition. This is a public exhibition where we're looking to draw up to 10,000 visitors in each 3-month run. So the body of work needed to translate as an exhibition as well as a stimulus for learning. So in that sense, it needed some kind of careful curation. For the young people, and particularly for the schools, the intention was not to just work with familiar poets, but to actually look at poets in a way that it was, as I said, an insight into their inner worlds, but also realising that poets were stimulated by different things. So in terms of, we didn't spend a lot of time looking at the body of work connected with those poets. We did look at some, but really the intention was to look about how poetry can be inspired by life, culture, politics, but more importantly, the poet's ability to really probe, think, critique, have new ideas, and essentially give wonder to words and language. So, as I said, the link between visual literacy and literacy we felt was a natural one. Our partners, Jonathan's talked a little bit about the kind of granularity of literacy and the kind of literacy levels. And we worked as a gallery to find new partners, but also partners who we'd worked with before. So we had a real range of diversity of kind of space, place, experience, and also audience reach and confidence of reaching different audiences. We were fortunate enough to have access to the data for the National Literacy Trust kind of cult literacy, I think we call them kind of cold spots or kind of areas of deprivation. So with a mapping of both ambition of where we would like to work, but also taking into account those kind of areas where we knew that we could make a difference with the programmes, particularly for schools and young people on the ground. So it was a mixture of kind of cultural literacy, but also kind of literacy levels and opportunity that we put together. And you'll see where we were active with the project. It also meant that we went right across the country in many senses, which was exciting for us in terms of movement of the collection. Obviously, part of this was about moving the Portrait Gallery collection across the country, as we're very committed to doing. So our programme delivery partners, we've heard from National Literacy Trust, and you're going to hear shortly from Apples and Snakes, a really kind of significant partner in the reach, both in terms of the public programme, but also some of the in-depth work we've developed with young people. We had an audience development consultancy supporting the introduction of the project on the ground. And this afternoon we'll be looking a little bit more on how we fashioned the kind of partnership in terms of local programme delivery. So making the exhibition, it wasn't just drawn together from the curators at the National Portrait Gallery. It was an opportunity for our youth forum to get involved. And working with Apples and Snakes, Daniela, and also from Lisa and colleagues, we took the young people through a kind of a curation process where they were able to work with the long list of objects in terms of our collection of living poets. But we're really kind of interested in that blend of strength of visual image, but also some of the poets they'd heard of. At this point, we didn't have an image of Kate Tempest in the collection, so they were quite animated about who should be in the collection, who wasn't there. And we've made kind of moves, obviously, to acquire that image. We weren't able to do it for the first exhibition, but we did have the Kate Tempest image unveiled in Lincoln as part of that exhibition. So we were able to acquire as part of the project too, which was pretty exciting. We didn't plan to run a website, and in some ways this is a salutary kind of lesson of what we could do in-house. This was an exhibition website or project website that we pulled together on the very kind of basic gallery template. We felt early on that we weren't going to be able to produce lots of print, and actually Erin, who you'll hear from later, we worked on developing a teacher's resource pack. And then we realised that there's so much activity going on with the project itself. Making sure that we had some sense of recording the energy in each venue was absolutely central to both inspiring other venues, but also giving a publishing platform. We were talking a lot about new work, a lot about kind of inspiration from the projects, and yet without this kind of site, we were really struggling to make all of that work visible beyond the exhibition itself. So the activity, again, we'll come on to hear a little bit more. It was a school's resource pack. We had interpretive audio from the curator at the gallery and Andrew Motion promoting the links to the Poetry Archive and their rich resources. Participation projects, where we're working with photography students. You'll hear more about that during today. And then there was lots of social media activity that we encouraged with the hashtag Picture the Poet. And then in different places, our partners managed to use social media in kind of very different ways, linked into their own strategies. So with hindsight, did it really work? Well, it did give some visibility to the project. It certainly, I think I've got memories particularly in Preston where without that platform we wouldn't have had the ability to publish local poets' work. Other partners took forward the publishing into zines and newspapers, which I hope they'll share with you. It gave us a very kind of quick marketing vehicle for each venue. I think individually our partners wouldn't have been able to produce a website for just a short 3-month exhibition. And it also gave us that sense of sharing momentum of ideas of there's an exhibition about to come, this is what it's achieved. But it had some sense of visibility for teachers knowing what was coming and what perhaps they were signing up to or could sign up to, given what previous experiences had been. So I think we would say, yes, it did kind of maintain momentum. So it was a very quick oversight. I hope I'm on time, but I'm going to pass over to Lisa Mead, who's Artistic Director at Apples and Snakes. And Lisa's just going to take us through the other kind of absolutely central partnership in the Picture the Poet project. Lisa, thank you.
Hello. There we go, that's me. Before we start, can I just find out who here is from a gallery? Okay. And who's here because of poetry? And who has worked with poetry in a gallery before? A lot of people, good. Anyone heard of Apples and Snakes? Yay, that's good. Okay, so this presentation is going to cover the basics. It's lovely lemsissy. Why we got involved, what we did, and I think more importantly what we learnt, because it's nice to hear how great projects are, but I think sometimes it's more important to hear the things that are kind of those tear your hair out moments, or the things that you wish if you could go back and do it again, you would change. So for the people that don't know us, we are the leading organisation for performance poetry and spoken word. We're an Arts Council NPO. Compared to the National Portrait Gallery, we're very small. There's 16 of us, mostly part-time, some in London, some based around the country, Stockton, Birmingham, Southampton and Barnstable at the moment. And we have a reputation for delivering high-quality performance and participation projects which encourage people to think about what poetry is and what it can be. And I think the reason for us, one of the reasons to come to Apples and Snakes for a project like this is that we've worked a lot across art form and with visual arts, and we've worked with photography and fashion designers and graphics and filmmaking and with galleries and museums, but we've never worked on a project of this scale nationally before. So this is kind of how we work, probably similar to the way a lot of you work, which is around producing, commissioning and touring. We work a lot with artist development across the country and helping to build the poetry infrastructure. We do a lot of participation and outreach work. And these kind of key principles we would take into any project which is around high quality, working in partnership, giving artists of different stages of development a chance to platform alongside professional poets. So, why we did it. Why use poetry and poets? I think pretty obvious for this one. The exhibition was about poets. Would have been a bit weird not to involve poetry in some way. Would have been missing a trick. I think poetry is about creating images with words, and there feels like a very natural connection between poetry and visuals. And we as an organisation, and I think poets in general, believe that if you have something to say, then you can create poetry. You don't have to be able to write it down even, just voice it. And we work with fantastic artists who enabled participants to create poems from those thoughts. And it's very immediate. It doesn't need loads of resources, which is good to have, but you don't always need that. And it's adaptable, and I think poets are very good at adapting to the groups and environments they find themselves in. There were other kind of more strategic reasons for the organisation, which was around being able to work with a fantastic national institution and other literature organisations that we haven't partnered with before, to build our links across the country, because we work in satellites and it's always good to kind of build more of a network, to find more poets that we work with across the country, to showcase poetry to audiences who might not necessarily engage with the art form, to build our knowledge, to build connections, and enable young people to engage with a high-quality project and show how poetry can be used to bring galleries alive in a different way. There's some people enjoying an event, having a lovely time. So, what we did. We had three core elements to the work that we did. One, which was about a programme meeting group, so the sort of programme delivery groups. We worked on a big project in 2012 as part of the Cultural Olympiad called Shake the Dust, which worked with lots of different national partners on the ground. And what we did there was set up programme delivery groups, which was about how, as a national organisation, you can work much more with the people in the region that know what needs to be done. So it was kind of trying to see if a model like that could work on a programme, a different programme. We delivered participation programmes which focused on young people in informal education settings, and there's a whole range of different groups that we work with. And in each gallery we had a live event which was about showcasing the work from those programmes and the local poets and poets that were featured in the exhibition. We delivered 56 workshops. 43 of those participants performed at the live events. We did 6 live events and we had 455 people attend. There are some young people performing, which I think was an amazing experience for all of them to be able to perform in a local art space alongside some well-known poets. What worked? I think the participation programme was really effective. We engaged lots of young people and new audiences. Some of these are some of the things that came out of the programme. We were able to run more events in the gallery spaces, working with local partnerships, which is kind of what we really hoped would happen. The live events particularly got really amazing feedback, and some of the films that we'll show over lunchtime show people's responses to that, and I think they're really worth checking out, because there are a lot of people that were really used to coming to their gallery but had never come to an event like this, and it showed how the gallery could be used in a different way. So like in Preston, we know that the poets in Preston have formed themselves into a collective in order to do more work. So these are the sort of things that you hope when you do a project like this, that more stuff comes out of it. We were in conversation with Sheffield about working on with some of the young people that they involved in the project. You know, things happen, staff move, it didn't come off in the end. We found that having a band in the gallery, we were really, from the beginning, we really wanted to create that sort of, you know, like late night events that happen in a lot of large galleries. We wanted to try and get that vibe into some of the galleries that we were working with, and wanted to have music, and we wanted to have bar, and we wanted to make it a kind of, you know, nice place to be. There was a lot of having to discuss what we did about where the bar went. Could we have wine? In order to get that to get that sort of atmosphere that we were hoping for, and in the end that worked in every space, and it was really fantastic. So what would we do if we did it again? So I think there was one thing around the programme groups about really being clear about who they wanted to have around the table and what that role was, and how that might then, in order to kind of build more of a legacy. I sort of feel like that was one area where if we went back and did it again, we might take a bit more time to set those up. The participation work, again, a lot of this is to do with logistics, but it would be really nice if a lot of the groups that we were working with only came to the gallery at the very beginning to look at the exhibition and at the end to perform. But if there was a way to build more of that during the programme, obviously, we'd, you know, with the hope then that would continue afterwards. And in not all of the galleries were we able to be in the space where the exhibition was, just because it wasn't large enough. So I think, you know, going forward, it would be interesting to think about whether we can place those events much more connected to the exhibition in the places where we weren't able to do that. It's also probably more interesting to think about the ways that you can work with poetry and creative writing in your own gallery or museum. Obviously, loads of you have already done that. You kind of said when I asked that question. And when we've done all sorts of things, I feel like you're all creative, you can come up with lots of ideas yourself. But we did a project where we reinterpreted all the labels, the interpretation labels in a museum were created into haikus. And so you had the museum's interpretations and then haikus kind of representing that. Was Croydon Museum. We had to condense all the objects of a decade into a haiku. It was quite a challenge. We put a lot of emerging artists into late night events, into galleries, and they often will then go and look at an exhibition and create a specific piece which they perform on the night. And I think that emerging artists or young artists in regions are a really good way to kind of start that process of engaging people. We've got people coming up working with the Horniman at the moment, putting some artists into their queer late night. We've kind of done lots of different things, which I'm sure you could also, getting the 2-minute warning. Here we go. So this is an example of a band in the gallery with the photographs behind it. Things also, like, we didn't have permission to film the photographs, which we didn't realise at some point. So then things like that are useful to sort it out. These things come up, don't they? You learn. So that's us, applesandsnakes.org, if you want to follow us on Facebook or Twitter, find out more about what we're doing, or come and talk to us at some point during the day. Thank you.